I came back after 2 months on a FEMA contract and nearly drove into a resort where my lakefront used to be. Yacht's umbrella's a concrete pier big enough for a truck and a gate with a sign that said, "Private HOA beach members only." I parked keys in the ignition and stared until my coffee went cold, jaw tightening like a trap. They'd turned my property into someone else's playground, and for a second I wanted to smash the gate just to make a point. When I pulled down that rutted access lane, the place looked like a postcard someone had photoshopped over my memory. White sunshades where driftwood used to sit, manicured sand where weeds had fought the wind, even a lifeguard chair painted ridiculous blue. Then I saw the marker I'd hammered into the ground years ago, half buried and still stubbornly leaning, and my stomach dropped. My old wooden dock was gone. In its place, a concrete pier, polished railings, two gleaming yachts tied to brand new cleats. I stood with the truck idling behind me, feeling the absurdity settle like cold iron. A woman in a golf visor, tablet in hand, and the air of someone appointed by God to manage other people's days came striding over like she owned the weather. "Excuse me, sir," she said. "This is private property." I said plain, "It's my property." She smiled the way people smile when they think the world is theirs to explain. Silver Pines had rehabilitated the shoreline. She told me it was a safety risk. They'd made an investment. I could sign a lease, or they could invoice me, or if I refused, they might pursue transfer under abandonment statutes. It read like a charity pitch with a threat stitched into the margin. Back at my kitchen table, surrounded by the county deed, the survey, and a pile of tax receipts, I read the letter they sent 3 days later, thick cream paper, HOA letterhead, an invoice for $92,350. Demolition, concrete, delivery, landscaping, security, staffing, beach, regrading, the works. They even attached photos that looked more like a lifestyle brochure than evidence, plus neighbor statements claiming the pier was dangerous and that no one had seen me on the lot for years. One neighbor wrote, "We assumed it was city land." I have signs, I thought. I pay taxes. I've got the deed. FEMA took my summer, but not my records. I didn't yell. I got methodical. I pulled old satellite images, overlaid plats, cross-checked permit filings, and traced every contractor listed on their invoices. Shoreline Dynamics, the company credited with the work, had no footprint beyond Silver Pines. The permit application submitted to the county had the parcel marked unassigned, the owner's signature a single/a blank where the consent should be. Whoever signed off on that had handed them an open door, and they'd walk through it with a truckload of lumber. My contact at the county recorder's office sent me a scan of the filing they claimed to have. The owner consent line was scratched out and dated before I even bought the land. The signature was a dash. They'd filed as if the shoreline was municipal frontage, not private property. Forgery or an aggressively sloppy effort to manufacture legality, either way, it was a smell I knew from disaster sites, opportunists moving fast in gray areas. I went back to the shoreline and watched Cap, low camera in hand. They'd put a lockbox on the gate, a laminated schedule stapled to the fence, beach access rotation, and a little economy of comforts trash can stamped with the HOA logo, a small storage shed tucked against the tree line extension cord snaking to a generator behind a rock wall that used to be mine. I set trail cameras in fake birdhouses, hid one in a decoy irrigation box, dusted the sign-in board with UV powder, not because I liked spying, but because prices like theirs required proof. The footage told the story in the plainest terms. Day 1, teenagers with loud music, open alcohol, someone starting a fire in a trash drum on the beach. Day 2, a man in a fishing hat collecting $20 bills from guests, handing out wristbands. Day 3, the HOA president, Marilyn Shore, arriving at dawn with a cooler labeled VIP. Day 4, contractors unloading a propane tank and setting up a smoker on my sand. Day 5, teenagers spray painting initials on my retaining wall. I found a QR code linked to an account titled Silver Pines Events Fund. It was a private club on my land, and they'd built the marketing before they built the math. I sent a certified letter, calm, professional, with attachments plats. Google Earth, screenshots, the deeds, a short list of violations. Demolition of a private structure without consent, unauthorized construction on private land, commercial use without permits or insurance, tampering with signage, intimidation, and threats to those documenting the activity. Cease immediately, I wrote, or face a claim for damages and criminal referral. They called back wanting to discuss this amicably. I didn't want their money. I wanted their scheme exposed. They escalated. HOA security in yellow vests appeared a heavy-duty combo lock on the gate, a printed sign, beach closed for private event entry by HOA, pass only. So I called who I always call when the paperwork matters, the sheriff and the county code enforcement, and a friend at the state attorney's office who'd worked with me on FEMA deployments. I handed deputies satellite prints and the deed. 2 deputies showed up before noon, they clipped the lock, and I walked through my own property with them right behind me. There was no melodrama, just law catching up to a lead balloon. At the picnic they'd organized under a red and white banner, people stood with unfinished drinks as I tore down that banner and set it in the sand. Marilyn confronted me, lips tight. A deputy taped a trespass notice to a tent pole. Within hours, the county prosecutor opened an inquiry. Permits were pulled, insurers started asking questions. 3 board members quietly resigned. I hired a forensic engineer who found the pier poured without soil testing, without proper reinforcement wiring that violated code and could have electrocuted a swimmer in a storm. I traced contractor companies to UPS mailboxes and family names, crooked bookkeeping stitched to nepotism. The courtroom was a modest room with a judge who'd learned to let evidence do the yelling. My lawyer laid out maps, a timeline of satellite images, invoices, and finally a subpoenaed audio where Marilyn's voice confessed a plan in practice. If we clean it up and throw permits at the county, no one will ask questions, he'll thank us later. It read like strategy, and the room felt smaller as the plan was spelled out in exhibit binders. The judge issued an injunction: cease all HOA activity on my parcel, preserve the site pending review, and no one from Silver Pines was to enter my property under any pretext. Then the small, sweet public things happened. A local reporter published the hearing transcript, neighbors called with apologies, some offered to testify against the board president. The county served demolition notices and revoked permits submitted under false pretenses. The concrete pier, their pride became rubble as an excavator took a chomp, and the beach looked for the first time in months like a place, not a profit center. Marilyn was arrested for perjury and misuse of funds. The county levied restitution and ordered ecological restoration, removal, and damages. Karma isn't instantaneous, but paper and persistence are a kind of slow justice. When the dust settled, I restored the old dock myself, plank by plank, scraping and sanding, until the wood whispered back to life. The county historical board even asked to preserve the original frame. Apparently it dated back to the 1940s. I put up a small walnut sign, Hargreaves Landing, private property, brass letters, plain and precise. Sitting on that dock at sunset with my dog Huck curled at my feet, I watched the water turn the color of old coins, and I felt something that wasn't just relief, it was quiet satisfaction, the hard kind you earn by doing the paperwork nobody wants to do. The pier had been a loud lie in the sand. The law, slow as it can be, was the chisel that broke it. I rebuilt the old wooden dock myself, plank by plank, and when I nailed the last board in place, it felt right. The lesson wasn't legalese, it was human entitlement, thrives in silence, and assumptions can be weaponized. You can't let polite neglect turn into theft. Mark your land, document it, and be ready to act when someone tries to erase your rights. So here's my question: when a community's benefit becomes someone's profit, who gets to decide what the public good looks like? Drop your story below. Did you stand up or look away? Was this justice or too far? Tell me why. I want to hear your takes.